Hi, I'm Donna Marie Johnson, and I'm coming to you with a presentation about organizational culture. I am a student in Comms 520 D01 at Liberty University with Dr. Hunt. First of all, let me let you know that organizational culture really is the organization, according to our textbook by Littlejohn and Foss. When I say that organization is the culture, that means that not only is the organization uh, seen as, whatever the name is, Facebook, Zappos, Amazon, whatever the name of the company is, not only is it seen as that name, that brand name, it is seen as what it is putting out there in the world. That culture comes through in everything that organization does. You cannot separate the culture from the organization. And also, there are organizations that are learning how to intentionally develop their culture. They're doing that on purpose. They're not just letting it happen. Now, it will happen no matter what, but they're not just allowing it to happen. Let me give you an example, practical example from life. Gardens are cultivated. Wilderness is wild, it's not cultivated. So, in organizations that are successful, they are more like gardens. They cultivate their culture on purpose. And when they do that, does one type of cultural strategy work for all organizations? Does one size fit all? Every size? No, it doesn't. And we'll talk about that more. Now, we defined organizational culture as being the organization itself, according to Littlejohn and Foss, but we're also talking about what is organizational identity and what is organizational identification. So there's a difference. Organizational identity, many times the traditional way of defining an organization's identity is by writing it down. What's that mission statement? And they'll have their vision written out, and they'll have their mission statement written out. How are we going to do what we said our vision is? However, organizational identification is different, and this is something we'll talk about a little bit more later. Organizational identification is how are others identifying with that company? How are the employees identifying with it? How are the other stakeholders, such as customers, identifying with it? Now, I'm going to give you some examples of organizations who are intentionally developing their culture in a very vulnerable and transparent way so that other people, not just their internal folks, but external stakeholders such as their customers or just the public in general can see what they're doing. Zappos.com is one of these companies, and we have a great book to read that tells us all about Zappos' culture. It's called Delivering Happiness, and it was written by Tony Hsieh, which is the CEO of Zappos. And the book talks in detail about how they developed the culture of their organization using very specific, purposeful techniques and strategies. And they were able to build a very profitable, valuable business, so much so that they were able to get bought by Amazon.com, which was a great accomplishment for them. And so Zappos.com goes in the book that Tony Hsieh wrote. He explains how they developed their culture, not just from the CEO's point of view. The CEO didn't just write down the core values and send it out to everybody. He wrote it and then he gave it to them and said, now you write, you're part of this. And then they made it into a book and then they shared it with the world. And they do that every single year in a very transparent way. This is something that happens through collaboration using tools that help them to come together and share in this way. This is something that any organization can do. However, some organizations may find this a much more daunting task to do. So we'll talk about possible solutions for that possible problem. Another organization, a quick service food organization, ChickfilA, who has been successful at acculturating their staff and their customers. They've done it in very intentional ways because they've had very long vision and they've had very entrenched values that don't just start at the head and then, get passed out to everybody, but they actually take the time to train and to teach and to mentor their employees to the point where, as their employees are interacting with the customers can see and believe what is being written on all the plaques all over the walls. Excuse me. They can see that everything that has been put out there in writing is actually being believed and followed up with by actions, by the way that they serve their customers when they come into the stores. Researchers have written about Chick-fil-A because they have been able to use them as an example of how there's a difference between when a company takes on a temporary tactic, and this is a problem that some organizations have with building their organizational culture. They'll take a tactic approach to building organizational culture, and they will take that tactic for a temporary period of time, and the employees don't believe it, and therefore the customers don't believe it, and it doesn't work. It doesn't have any kind of impact or produce any kind of results, and researchers have shown this in the research they did with Chick-fil-A and other companies. But however, with companies who are more transformative in their approach to developing their organizational culture, they do it over time. They have longer vision, and they are very committed to it, from the financial side to the technology side. They set aside the monies that are needed to make whatever changes they have to make and lead that change throughout the organization in every area, and align their organization at all levels and all ways with those core values, with that culture that they are intentionally developing. So there's a difference between the temporary tactic and the true transformation. Also, there's a big difference in how a large organization is going to pursue this development of their organizational culture versus how a smaller organization or entrepreneur is going to do that. There are some things that are different between the two. A large organization can invest time, people, and money into developing an internal social network that they can use just for their organization, just for their company. But a smaller organization, they're just not going to have the same kind of resources, money resources, people resources, to be able to do that. And so they will need to strategize a little bit more. The smaller organization will need to strategize a little bit more to find things that will help them to do the same things the bigger organizations are doing, but in a leaner way, with less money and less time. So some of the solutions that you can see now, if you go online, you can check out Workplace by Facebook. It's a free online social network that Facebook provides specifically to companies, to organizations, so that they can get their teams connected online through a dedicated, private, secure online social network that is only for the organization, just for them. And they can begin to build to transform the culture for the organization in a very impactful way, using tools and techniques that have been researched by a larger organization. They can start applying this, but do it in a very affordable way using this tool, Workplace by Facebook, or other tools such as Salesforce. Salesforce has some similar things. They have a chat feature that enables the staff of a company to be able to communicate beyond just using it. Salesforce is a customer response management system. It can be used to stay in contact with customers, to remind you, call that person back. They said they wanted to get a call back in 6 months to see if they're ready to buy, the product or whatever. So you can use it for that, but you can also use it to communicate within the organization. And that helps to build out that culture for the organization in a very intentional way. So these are just a couple of the tools, Workplace by Facebook and Salesforce. Those are just a couple of the tools that can be used, but there are so many other things that are available online on your mobile phones, free apps that can be added onto every phone within the organization to enable you to stay connected and build that culture in a way that brings that real transformation, and it makes it very believable for your customers to see that, hey, they're not just saying that they believe in ABC, but they're really doing this. We see it, and it makes a difference. Again, there are limitations, though, to some of the features. For instance, with Workplace by Facebook, you have to have your own company-owned domain. You also have to have more than one team member. It can't be just you by yourself. Even if the person isn't necessarily an employee of your company, you would still have to assign them their own email within your company domain. So these could be potential limitations for small business owners, but they can be overcome with the right strategy and the right people on your team to advise you and help you get it done. So, in conclusion, what does an organization need to make culture development work? They need long vision. It can't just be a temporary tactic. They need complete commitment. You have to definitely have your CEO committed and your janitor committed. It can't just be something that only your top people believe in. Your culture has to truly be your organization. And it can't be that if half the people don't believe it and aren't willing to do it, to do the things that you all say that you really believe in. And that, being able to be committed like that, being able to have that long vision, it takes true vulnerability and transparency. A lot of people don't agree with Zappos, the CEO, Tony Hsieh, for sharing as transparently as he shared about the culture of the organization and making their culture book that all of his employees get to share in. They share about both weaknesses and strengths. They put it all out there in a very transparent way. A lot of people don't agree with him about that, but they are committed. They said in their book called Delivering Happiness, they are committed to transparency. That is part of their organizational culture. So, and in terms of Chick-fil-A as an example, the vulnerability that it takes to say, hey, we're going to close our fast food restaurant every Sunday, that takes a lot of vulnerability because you're opening things up wide for your competitors to come in every Sunday. Nevertheless, they've prospered anyway. So in closing, I just want to leave you with this. One of the things that Christian leaders need to remember as they're developing the culture for their organizations is that Christ Jesus is the root and the foundation of everything for any type of culture we're developing as Christian leaders. And that is a culture of love. And I just wanted to remind you of that because sometimes it's really easy to get caught up in all of the day-to-day things that we're worried about in our businesses, from the money to dealing with people, human resource issues. It's easy to get caught up in those things and to forget our foundation, but the cultural foundation of all Christian organizations, for-profit or nonprofit, must be founded in the culture of love that Christ Jesus told us. He said they'll know us by our love. God bless you, and thank you for listening to my presentation about organizational culture.